the BHAW Army Wrestling Radio Show. I'm Jordan Tom, followed with Brian Rowan. Today's guest, 2003 national qualifier. He was a Most Improved Award winner, Mr. Intensity Award winner, team captain. He was two-time EAWA place winner. And special note here, and I'm sure we'll get into it during the episode, but he was a AWFL Team Jose captain. So tonight's guest, we got Lieutenant Colonel Bernard Gardner.
Dean, how's it going?
Guys, good to see you. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. This is awesome.
Excited to have you here. We were doing some I was doing some brainstorming last week, like who we should have on. I was asking Willie Simpson about it. He's like, have you talked to Bean lately? And I was like, not in like 8 years. He's like, well, he beat me. But no, I appreciate you coming on. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, so I guess getting things started, we starting chronologically. You came to West Point, coming from out west, you grew up in Wyoming. Talk to us a little bit about your process going to West Point, recruited, going to the prep school. Walk us through that a little bit.
Okay, so I guess for me, wrestling started when I was in the 6th grade. To be honest, it started at our community church, where after church, all the boys would get together and we'd all go wrestle in the lawn after church and things like that. And, all the guys that were in wrestling, like they'd always get the best of me. And so I didn't want any more of that. And so it took some convincing. My father let me wrestle. So starting in the 6th grade, I enjoyed it. That first year in middle school, I was able to win my first tournament, and really I was hooked. I started doing freestyle and Greco on the side, and really short seasons in Wyoming. And really just progressed from there, and I started having a lot of success. Eventually got into high school, and I won 3 state high school titles out of Wyoming. It's a small state, low population, but there's some solid wrestling and there's some good talent that comes out of there. In my senior year, after winning 2 state titles, I basically got on the short list for as an honorable mention All-American. I think that was through USA Wrestling magazine, and so that narrowed it down to like a real short list of really recruiting potential, where the college saw your name, and I started having a lot of letters in the mail, and I had got several from West Point at this juncture and early in my senior year. And I just stacked them up in the bottom of my locker. I had a high school principal who, he was an assistant wrestling coach, and he come down to the locker room and we were talking about practice or whatever. And he seen the letters piled up in my locker, and he's like, "What are those?" I'm like, "Oh, there's, different various recruiting letters from schools." And sure enough, one was West Point. And so he saw that, and he kind of knew the prestige that brought with it. So he's like, "What are you doing? How come you never told me about this? We need to get on this." And so basically, he convinced me to get on board with that. Otherwise I would have probably, gone to the University of Wyoming. I'd gone to all of their camps. But to be honest, I think I was much more interested in University of Wyoming than they were in me. So I thought I was good stuff, but they didn't recruit me as hard. But as soon as I contacted West Point and kind of started going down that process, then and I think it initially started with the tail end of Coach Effner as it switched to Giles. Coach Giles at the time, so I was caught in this weird transition. But nonetheless, I went through the application process and got into West Point. Now, they sent me to the prep school first. I had only taken like the SAT or the ACTs at the time. That's kind of a Western. At the time, that was like a Western test, and we really didn't focus on SATs, but I need to have both. So I think because of those, one, not having high enough scores, and then not taking the SAT, I think they wanted to push me through an additional year at prep school. With that, Coach Giles wanted me to go down there and then kind of get an additional year of wrestling, which at the time was not – it was not what the program is today. I mean, it wasn't even what it was in the early 2000s. I mean, they didn't have a GA coach that went down there to coach. Like, it was very informal. You had a major who was really good, but he only had a high school wrestling background. But he volunteered to step into the coach as a wrestling coach, and we did some small tournaments and got some reps under our belt before we went to the academy. So that's really how it became. I got to West Point. Side note: I did play football at prep school, so it was like, do I lose weight or do I gain weight? For football, and then lose it all. So I had put on a lot of weight. I wrestled 135 in high school, and then by the time I was done with football season, I was like, look, high 70s, low 180s. So when I shifted gears and got to the academy, I had a lot of weight to drop. But, anyway.
So when you were at the prep school, I guess I didn't realize that there wasn't a coach then. When did that shift between? Because I guess I should have probably mentioned this at the start for the listeners, but Beam was my prep school coach when I started out. So I guess that would have gave some context earlier on. But
yeah.
When did that shift to where there was a full-time prep school coach, and was that something that happened while you were like obviously a cadet and they made additional priorities?
Yeah, you're right on, and good catch with that. So while I was at the academy, I believe the first grad assistant that went down was, I think it was Eric Miller, or maybe the year after with Justin Gorkowski. I can't remember which year that started. It's definitely when I was at the academy when that opportunity opened it up. Is Coach Barbie's initiative that, instead of keeping the GA there at the coaching staff at West Point, pushed down to the prep school, and then some of these recruits that needed a little extra year for maturity and getting after academia or whatever the case is needed. That was good exposure, and then so they would push 4 or 5, maybe 6 recruits down there, get some seasoning, along with the walk-ins, do some junior college, a few D1 tournaments, and kind of get an additional, what equates to a redshirt year for other colleges. So I think that's when it started. And then I was probably 4th or 5th in line to go back down there and keep that initiative going.
So one of the things you said that brought back some nostalgia was the USA Wrestling magazine, going through the rankings. I don't know if they push those out anymore in print, but that was always fun when you saw your name in there for the first time or coming back.
Right. I'm not sure I was ever ranked. Maybe you guys were.
Jordan's showing a little flex in there a little bit.
Oh, please. I wasn't speaking personally. I was saying if you were lucky.
I saw one of those actually at a high school. It was like for 1999. It was posted. I was looking at the names and I was like, wow. I was like, I've never heard of this guy. How did I never hear of this guy? He must have not done anything in college.
Want to talk about transparency or rankings? There was none back then, but that's besides the point. So you talked about some of the coaching changes that occurred during your time, kind of like coming in. One person that was on staff that's just kind of an interesting note was Sammy Henson. Had a period of time there at the academy and would have trained around your weight class. Obviously, he's known for being a super intense guy. I mean, his nickname is the Bull. So, what kind of his involvement? How did that maybe change your approach to training? What was that like? Being involved with him.
Yeah, I mean, first it was incredible. I love that man, and he taught much more about just the sport of wrestling, but life in general. When you're trying to wrestle at the level that he was wrestling at internationally, and then still have a life, still have coaching, there's a lot of lessons there. And then, yes, he was super intense. Now he came in, I believe it was my senior year when he came in, and I had the year previous as a national qualifier. And, so the expectation was pretty high. So when he came in, he immediately, he grabbed me as a partner because he was still training at the time. It was kind of a give and take relationship, which was great, to have somebody of his caliber around. I mean, 1998, the world champion. I mean, you were training with the best. Now, I will tell you, he's touted as, at the time and probably even to now, as pound for pound, one of the, if not the strongest wrestler to ever come out of the United States. I've heard that, numerous times, but I will tell you, like, it's not pound for pound. he is straight up the strongest wrestler at that time ever. It was incredible what he could do, and I've never wrestled with anybody like that. But you add technique, impeccable technique on top of that. I mean, it was just he was a drilling machine, and the way he went about it was just incredible. I think between me and Patty Simpson, we just got the hell beaten out of us. Just nonstop, just rotating it out, and it was great because every time you were in those sessions, I mean, you were just learning, and he was stopping to show you stuff, and what a tremendous opportunity, that most people don't have.
Was he just positionally strong, or was he just like strong, like when he grabbed you?
All of the above. Like he looked like a bodybuilder. If you've seen him, he just looked like this little bodybuilder, but had the agility and the technique and the finesse to be able to, also be one of the best athletes. That didn't slow him down at all. Just quick as all get out. And he had the mentality that nobody was ever going to take him down or beat him ever. So that was also another learning point. So
Probably
funny story. Yeah, funny story is I think we wrestled no less than probably 1,000 goes, over the span of a year. No less than 1,000. I mean, we were in the room for over the course of the year, off season, preseason, season, off season, and we would go. And I will tell you, I can count on one hand, and really with like fingers, the times I took them down. And so on those particular days that I learned after the first time, after practice was when I left. Well, no. I made that mistake once, did not leave, and practice went on, and then it turned into a punishment. The second time it happened, I think we were 30 minutes into practice. I was like, nope, I'm good. I got my takedown. I'm out. And I ran out of the room. Ran off. Patty said that was horrible for him because he became the training partner right after me. So, no, it was fantastic training with Sammy, and having somebody of that caliber is just phenomenal experience.
It's when you mentioned Patty Simpson, it brings me back because I think of him like now what he's like, and then I also think about him when I was a plebe and he was a firstie. But then I also remember kind of seeing pictures of him when he was like a yuck. When you were talking about him, when you were a firstie, and it was he looked like such a baby back then. When I think back of those pictures and what he was like, but I got a little side note there, but so rewinding it a little bit, before your first year, earlier on, we haven't touched much into the AWFL, the Army Wrestling Football League. I don't know when it started. It was around when I was there, and I don't know when it stopped. But talk to us a little bit about like the fall, the Army Wrestling Football League, what it was like back then, and then I want to hear the story about the burger eating contest. Eddie Gibbons passed that info.
Oh, yeah.
I asked him for some interesting stories from cadet life, and he was like, "You got to talk about this." So I was like, "All right."
Man, that was a long time ago, but I think I can recollect that. So I'll start first with the AWFL, Army Wrestling Football League. Now that was that was instituted, I would have to guess, in the late 90s, if not earlier. And it was a tradition kind of handed down. Like when I was a freshman, I distinctly remember that the fellows were out there, and I wasn't, I went out there a couple times as a freshman, I remember. And some of the older guys, I think Dominguez at the time was kind of the lead effort with it. And I remember, man, heck, even at the time, like Charlie Russell-Worthy, Dave Ford, and some of the upperclassmen were out there. And then we just continued on the tradition. So it was really a preseason and a spring deal. So, the thing about West Point, as you two know, it's hard to find opportunities for team building outside of your sport, just because the schedule's always packed, so on and so forth. So we'd always plan for the weekends at some point, and we'd go down, find one of the fields, and play some quote unquote touch football, which you put a bunch of wrestlers in any sport, it always devolves into tackle and wrestling matches, as you can imagine, and the competition was absolutely fierce. So while we were there, we took this tradition, and as we became more of the upperclassmen, we got to basically start picking our teams. And so between me, Kurt Pryor was kind of he was the actual team captain of the football. I was the wrestling team captain, but he was the team captain of the AWFL. And so we had Team Jose. And so, to be inducted as that part of, I should say for that team, I think there were a couple shots of Jose involved, and some indoctrinatory things to make sure you're tough enough to be on Team Jose. Everybody else kind of was the other team. So it was some knockdown, drag out competition, all in good fun, team building. So that was AWFL. Now, burger eating contest. I think because of AWFL and then Team Jose, we started talking smack one day, and I think it was Anthony Duncan, Eddie Gibbons. He's definitely involved, old Fast Eddie. And something came up, and I was cutting so much dang weight during season. In the off seasons, I would always balloon to like 170, 180 pounds, and I was a 33 pounder. So every year it was just this knockdown, drag out fight from July all the way to the weight calibrations to test down to lower weights. It was just a fight trying to lose all that weight. But that was kind of like my natural being was around 180 pounds. And, but I could eat in the middle of the season. It didn't matter. After a tournament, I could throw down like 2 Whoppers. Anyway, so, they knew I could eat. 2 Whoppers and then a Coke and then the full meal. Like it was a lot of food. Anyway, we started talking smack one day, and they're like, "Well, we got this great burger restaurant down in it was northern New Jersey. I can't remember where the heck was that. Anyway, they served some of the best burgers that were supposed to have been in the area, and Anthony Duncan kind of took the lead. So one day we decided to go down there and have a burger eating contest. Jeremy Connor was another one. He was a part of this. So me, Kurt, Jeremy, Eddie Gibbons, Anthony Duncan, maybe a couple others, and we went 8 burgers. And to be honest, I can't remember who won. I can't remember who won. Maybe it was me, but it was like a little bit bigger than a slider. So there's like White Castle sliders. They're not very big. So these are a little bit bigger than a slider. So they're, they're not like super tiny burgers. And I think the tally was something like 30, like high 20s or 30 burgers, just something absolutely ridiculous that I can't believe I survived with that much, HCl running through my veins. But yeah, it was a good time. Good outing for Team Jose.
If it makes you feel better, Eddie said that you won. You took the win, you last bite of the bun, and then you immediately walked outside and puked. So that makes you feel better.
Okay, all right. I appreciate the refreshing of my memory there. Yeah, I'll have to get with Eddie. I can't remember the count though, but that's awesome. That was so long ago.
I know that. Yeah,
we can just add that to the list of credentials then. How about that?
He also said to mention, and this is a good segue, I guess, into like what cadet life was back in the early 2000s. He also wanted to remind about the OC watch parties he'd have in his dorm room. He called it a dorm room.
OC block parties and dorm room. I'm not sure that was at West Point. Oh my gosh! Yeah, that's almost like.
But I watched the OC a little bit as a cadet.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would admit to that. A little bit professionally embarrassed, but no, we had No, we had, you had limited, like I say, limited opportunities to do things. And there was like one night a week, and it had to be early in the week, right? So I think it was like a Monday showing where I would just stop everything, stop studying, stop everything, and I'd have Kurt would always be over the room, and we'd have to find something to watch. And like, I think the next best thing at the time was like young, people our age, OC, Orange County. We'd sing along with the opening music to the show, and then watch the show. Nobody talked. You got in trouble with pillows thrown at you if you talked. They had to wait till the commercials, but it was serious stuff. And then once the show was over, everybody went back to what they were doing. And it was a great time. Kind of not, took away from focus on other things, but yeah, it was great. But yeah, I guess I'm admitting to it. So
when I first brought it up, I was like, oh shoot. I was like, Bean doesn't even remember watching this. This is like really bad. And you remember every detail.
He just didn't want to admit it.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a toss-up at the time between Dawson Creek and then Orange County or something like that. It's, But thanks again for showing my age, Brian. I appreciate that.
You did what you had to do to make it through and break up the monotony. So.
No, that's exactly right. Small victories, when you can get them.
So kind of getting back to wrestling a little bit, you have a really successful Cal year. You go to nationals, and just talk about kind of that run you went on. You got 30 DIWs, qualified for nationals, and then you go, Sammy comes in your senior year. There's a lot of momentum built up. Just talk about that last back end of your career.
Well, for the I guess I would start with going into my junior year, right? So, we've had, everybody knows the Simpsons. I love the Simpsons, old Phil and Patty, and the whole lineage of them, So as a sophomore, I was a 141 pounder, and I thought that I had that locked up. And then somebody named Philip Simpson comes on the team as a freshman. I'm like, who is this guy, right? So we all know how that worked out, right? And so for the first time, really, I had to admit defeat. I'm like, I'm not going to beat that guy, and he's got the 41 locked down. I got to do something different, And I did not want to just be a JV wrestler or go to off tournaments. I wanted to change something. So I couldn't bump up to 49. I was just too short. I wasn't strong at 49. 41 was locked up. So I had to do something. So I decided, and I talked to Todd Chesborough. He was a coach before Sammy had come in, and he was the assistant coach. And I was like, hey, I'm letting you know, I'm going to go ahead and just letting you know, I'm going down to 33 next year, and I'm going to lock it down. And this is how it's going to be. And, he seemed to like it, but he's like, you better start now. And so I started that summer in like June, cutting the weight and getting all down. So finally I did that. But it was a struggle with the weight. And I lost a lot of close matches and I think it had to do with a lot with the weight cutting of trying to maintain that light weight. So going into EIWAs, my junior year, I'd lost 11 of like the last 15 matches of going into the EIWA tournament, to include a nail biter with Navy, as we all know. So I would tell you the confidence was kind of lacking going into that tournament. However, that also gave me, an attitude of nothing to lose going in. And so that's kind of how that Cinderella story came to be, and I beat some really good guys going into the EIWA tournament. I think Matt Eveleth from Penn, he beat me in the quarterfinals. So I wrestled back and eventually beat him for third place in the bid to nationals. Max Meltzer from Harvard. I mean, I think he was up to like, ranked 14th that year. And then on the other side of the bracket that year was Corey Cooperman. So unfortunately I didn't get to meet him in the finals. He was on the other side of the bracket, but anyway, it was tough, some real tough guys, and I'd made it through, nothing to lose. Went to the national tournament, and I drew Mark Jane of Illinois. He was a number 8 in the nation at the time. So that first, and it was a pigtail match, and that's always my toughest match because of the weight loss. And so that one was a tough tough match, and then Bryce Brock of Boise State, and then I was done. But anyway, that was a high expectation going into the next year, into senior year, team captain, national qualifier. And then, just again, I had my weight much better under control that year. So I started to see a lot more success. I was winning at dual meets, placing in almost every tournament that we went to, minus Las Vegas that year. Essentially placing in all the tournaments. So I started seeing a lot of success, but it's finally EIWA. I just, I kind of choked in the third and fourth place match and took fourth and lost the bid to nationals. And that was a real tough pill to swallow. I'll be honest with you. I still think about it to this day. Like, what if, and I peaked exactly right at nationals, I think that they're, with Sammy Henson in the corner, Pat Popolizio, I think, we could have made a run there similar to my EIWA run in 2003. And that's the way I thought. I honestly thought, that's how it's going to work out. We're going to make the blood rounds and scrap to be an All-American. Like, that's always in, as with any wrestler, going into nationals, that's in your back of your mind of what could be. So, yeah, it was a tough pill to swallow, and it took a little while getting through that. But.
I hear you. I appreciate you sharing that. I resonate with a lot of the things you're saying, especially the weight cutting part. So here's what I'll ask you. Where was your number one place to cut weight at? We heard somebody tell us, I can't remember if it was on there or not, they said they cut weight in the steam tunnels. I'm not going to mention their name because, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, you don't want to throw Logan under the bus.
Yeah, don't throw. Did you have a spot that you cut weight at, or some kind of special technique that you used?
I'll tell you my technique. And so at this time, in 2000, it was after all the rules had changed. There's no more saunas, no more sweat rooms, none of that stuff. So it was like the good old fashioned way, if you will. And I was, it was almost 20 a week in water that I was losing. I would get up to 152 and every week go down to 133. So I had to find a good way to do that, and I had to get a system in place. So what it would be, and we spent enough time in the wrestling room, I wanted to go somewhere else. And so I went to the 62 room in Arvin Gym, and I bundled up, got my sweats on, got all bundled up, and I didn't care what people thought about me. They always thought I was crazy walking in with all that, stuff on. And I would get on and I had it down to a 1 hour workout, and it would be a couple 1 hour workouts, and it would be 20 minutes on the treadmill, 7-minute 2 mile, right? So it was, and then whatever extra for 20 minutes. Then I would go to the elliptical for 20 minutes, and then I would go to the bike for 20 minutes. And I would do, it was 3 on, or it'd be 1 off, 1 on, 3 off. So you were just doing sprints on the bike, right? So I would do that workout, and it would be a good sweat. And then I would leave the Arvin room. I'd run back to my, room, sit down, and I'd try to focus on some studies. And I'd leave all my sweats on, but I always had a Diet Coke. Every time I had a Diet Coke, and I had a Diet Coke sitting on my desk. So I crack the Diet Coke and I drink a Diet Coke, and it's like I tricked my body into believing that I was getting rehydrated, and then I'd just start sweating more. And I did that for exactly 20 minutes. I'd set my timer on, and then I'd go take a cold shower. So, that was it every time. And that equated to a 5.5 pound workout every time. Like it was a system and a science. So that's how I was able to do it. So I'd do that one day. The next morning I'd go do that again, and I'd be pretty close to weight.
That's super hardcore. When's the last time you've done that workout?
This morning.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I tried, but that was I was in a special kind of shape.
You ever rip one out
point,
just for the heck of it?
No, that is an unsustainable solution at 39 years old. I will. I may try to get a portion of it. Not only that, I always listen to Shania Twain. Shania Twain was my go-to music because it was relaxing, and I could think about everything but what I was physically doing. I don't know why it was Shania Twain. Maybe she was good looking or hot. I don't know, but that was the music. It wasn't rock. It wasn't heavy metal. It wasn't pump up jam. It had to be something like that. So it was Shania Twain. I'll never forget. It was a good system, man.
Ain't nothing wrong with some Shania.
That's right. Yeah.
So, moving past your career wrestling, you graduate, you're selected as a prep school coach of, a great class coming in. Some of the best guys. That was
5-star recruiting class. Yes, the best.
It was very highly touted. Talk to us about that experience. Being down on the Jersey Shore, not up at West Point. You're on your own now. Talk to us a little about that.
Oh, that was fantastic to, one, staying there and having the opportunity before just, going right out into the Army and getting after the Army commitments and duties. Yes, you're still in the Army, but, I was still doing what I loved, and that was coaching and being around wrestling. And you do that, for as many years as all of us have. There's, it's a way of life. So, being able to graduate and be a young officer and still be able to coach was just awesome. And not only that, but I had, like you say, a phenomenal recruiting class. I mean, I had, I think we had something like 5 or 6 recruits. And then we had a series of walk-ons that were all they were pretty good and able to compete at the junior college and D2, D3 level, compete really well. And some of them had, really good records. So that was just a great experience, being able to, lock in the schedule early on, and kind of get there for the preseason, meet you guys, and start training. In some regards, and maybe, looking back, I think I probably was a little hard on you guys as far as the physical punishment and the indoctrination right into college wrestling. You may disagree with me, you may agree with me. Just looking back on it, I felt that was probably a little bit too intense, maybe, but all for good measure. Anyway, that was great. At the same time, I also had lived in a beach house on the Jersey Shore with the other soccer and lacrosse coaches. So you can imagine how that went. And you guys have all seen the TV series Jersey Shore, and I would like to say there's more truth than not with that show. And we were right in the middle of that. So you can imagine how that went. It was a great experience to go out and let your hair down at the same time, still be able to focus on wrestling and be around guys, strapping lads like yourself, be rowing.
I have a slight confession. I don't think I ever told you this, but one preseason. So for all the listeners out there, Bean was pretty hard on us in the preseason. Well, we have all these preseason workouts, and one of them was a sprint day, where he was like, "Hey, we're gonna do, an undisclosed amount of these sprints, and you're gonna be faster than the first time, the first sprint every single time." And so he goes out and jogs, 200 yards down the road, and we all come together as you're going down there, and we're like, we're going to dog it on this first one so that our time is really slow so that we can always beat this. And we have to act like we're really tired. It was totally not the BHAW way to go about things, but we had you so fooled because you thought we were going so hard all these reps, and we were jogging back to the side after it. And we're like, oh man, we're getting one over. We won that day.
You won that day, but it was a marathon, not a sprint. I knew it was going on. It was just a matter of time. It was all just a matter of time before we started going 7-minute goes, and you couldn't slough off. So once we got in the lion's den, of course.
Joke's on you. It wasn't about conditioning. It was about teamwork building exercise.
Yeah.
So you obviously had fun on the Jersey Shore, and you get done hanging out with Snooki, and it's time to go to the Army. You obviously joined in a really pivotal time in our nation's history. Obviously with the invasion going on. Just talk us through kind of going to Bullock and then getting to your platoon during that time and what that was like.
So after I left the prep school, man, I stayed there for 10 months. It was almost 10 months. I stayed there and was at prep school, and then I had to go to armor officer basic course as a I'm an armor officer by trade, and in the back of my mind, I thought there was an all academy and a WCAP kind of pipeline for me. And so I was thinking going in there that I was going to go to all Army, do the tryouts and kind of go through that program. And I really wouldn't even go into the regular Army. Like in the back of my mind, that's what I started going into Bullock with. Well, that didn't work out in the first, none of the dates would line up. I wasn't going to make it to the tryouts and all of that stuff. So I had to focus on Army stuff. And as it worked out, right after Bullock, which is a 6-month course, at the end of Bullock, I would report to my next unit, and within 3 weeks, I would be in Iraq. We were deploying. So it became there was a point in time where I really had to like take stock of what I was about to get myself into and kind of readjust and say, I'm going to combat. Like, this is real. I better start focusing on what I'm supposed to be doing in the Army and pay attention and devote everything that, similar how I focused in wrestling. I better focus and recalibrate to the Army. Otherwise this can go bad. I mean, we're going to combat, right? So I shifted focus, and it was painful, but I did. I ended up doing well at OBC, and then went to my first unit, and I went up to Fort Fairbanks, Alaska with the 172nd Stryker Brigade. Got assigned to a platoon, and literally within a couple weeks, we had deployed to Iraq. Went out to Anbar Province, and I mean, it was immediately, baptism by fire, so to speak. And after we did 12 months of that, and Troy Yegi, you've had him on, and he was in the unit. He was in the Field Artillery unit. I was in the Cav Squadron, but yeah, that ended up being a very long deployment, 16 months. I was a platoon leader the entire time. I was going on patrols nearly every day, if not twice a day, or just staying out for almost months at end. We'd be out just doing missions. So it was a lot of high adventure. It was exciting, scary at times, got banged up quite a bit, and survived through that. But that changed my whole focus on life, and really about duty. And kind of, from then on, there's no question I was, full on staying Army, and that was going to be my profession.
Appreciate you sharing that. So when you kind of transitioned from Alaska, there may be a gap in some time, but I recall you being Whit Dunning's company commander. He was one of your platoon leaders. Whit Dunning was my classmate, for the listeners who don't know. What was that like? Kind of having an Army wrestler working for you? Did it bring back Army wrestling memories? How was Whit as a PL? I'd like to know that. And I was actually in Charleston earlier this week, and he lives in Charleston and works for Matt Kyler. Wait, no, Matt Kyler works for him. So it's all kind of coming full circle even this week. But yeah, how was that?
Oh, that's awesome, man. And I'm so happy you brought Whit up. I love that man, by the way. Just a fantastic human being, fantastic leader, officer. He got out of the Army. He's, doing his thing, and that's awesome. But we were in 3rd Brigade, 1st ID out of Fort Knox, Kentucky, IBCT. We trained up there, and I was actually in a different battalion at the time, and at the last minute, the command slate got shifted, and I got moved over to an infantry battalion. So I ended up taking command of Charlie Company 126, and lo and behold, I didn't know much about the unit. Like, I was focused on other things. I was actually in a complete different, almost a complete different province they were in Afghanistan. So I didn't know much about it. I just knew Whit was running around. I just never had seen him. And lo and behold, he's in my company. I found out like the day before I got there. And so, I show up, and immediately, that's, it was great to see him, shake hands. And of course, right off the bat, he, we greet and talk. And, one of the first quotes I remember him saying was like, he could always sound exactly like Chuck Barbie in his thick Oklahoma accent. Hey, Bernard, lean dog's a mean dog. Like almost every day, the levity in that situation just helped break up the monotony. It was good to have him around, and I think there was a wrestling story that we told each other almost every day. But it was awesome, and it helps that he's extremely competent in his job, and he was a leader in the company. He was a leader among the PLs, and really, as I come in there on board into the company, he was helped leading me too. So that was great. That was great. Occasionally we'd go out and have stogies in the back shack, and we'd get some downtime between patrols or what we were doing. And then I guess the greatest thing I loved about him is he'd constantly razz the company XO just all the time. He'd just be on the XO, and that was the XO needed it. So it was awesome having him around. But I will tell you, on September 3rd of 2011, it was literally the day that he was done being a PO. He had got his time. The battalion commander moved him from my company, moved him up to battalion staff. It's just kind of an impression, PL, battalion staff. So this particular example, like he had his PL time. There's other PLs that had to come in, and young lieutenants that had to get their time. So it was like it was the day before, like September 2nd, and his last day with the platoon. He moves up battalion staff, and as it worked out, the next day, we get a tip, we got a bad guy out that we had intel. Basically, there was a real bad guy that we've been trying to roll up for quite a while. He was at a certain location, so we put together a company plan, and we go out to nab this guy with the Afghan border police, and this particular guy had there was always that potential that the operation could go south quick, and there could be a lot of bad guys out there. And so as it would turn out, we went out to nab this guy, cordon and search operation, couldn't find him, spent too long on the ground, turned into a big ambush, and I got grenaded as part in that ambush. Did pretty bad and wins too. We kind of fought through it, excellent, and we all ended up getting back. Anyway, the cat that up, and of course, Witt's like, he's on battalion staff and meets us at the hospital and see, what was going on. See what's going on. I think the conversation went something like, I looked over at Witt and I'm like, well, hell, Witt, where are you at on that one, man? And of course, he promptly replied, well, heck, if I would have been there, this wouldn't have happened. And so, so I'm like, all right, Witt, I'm going to hit the 7-minute clock and it's go time. Anyway, we got through that, but that's just kind of the larger point on that is Witt did a lot. He was very good at his job, keeping his men safe and doing good. But we always brought back levity, even in those sorts of circumstances. But it was always good having him around.
Appreciate that. Yeah, the texting with him the last couple of days has been it just jogs back a lot of memories. He was always very blunt, always tell it to you straightforward. But we weren't able to link up, but it was nice reminiscing on those days. And speaking of reminiscing, I think the last time we spoke before getting ready for this was down at Fort Campbell when you're going through air assault school. So for the listeners out there, we had a division run the next day. It's about 10 o'clock at night. I'm already in bed asleep. Eddie Gibbons calls me and he's like, hey, you got to come over. And I'm like, hey, I'm in bed. I'm not coming over. And he's like, he only lived like 2 minutes on the street. Anyway, he's like, hey, Bean's here. We're drinking. And I was like, okay. And we polished off a fifth of Jose. I didn't realize that like the meaning behind the Jose Cuervo. But now I guess, you guys are Team Jose, so it makes sense.
Yeah, there was I don't apologize for that, first of all. I think that's awesome. I think we've all gone through that experience of time went on to little too much the night before a big run or something. I didn't realize you had a division run. Or maybe I did and I just don't remember. But heck, yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, Eddie Gibbons, we were all part of the Team Jose. In fact, I still have the first bottle of when we called it, coined it Team Jose, of the Jose shots that we all shared. And so that's, yeah, that was pretty awesome. I still talk to Eddie from time to time. He's doing extremely well in the Army. It's doing awesome. About once a year, we'll link up and keep in touch. But
Yeah, the Army is definitely a place where you kind of separate a lot and you lose touch with a lot of folks. But once you reconnect, it's like you haven't skipped a beat. I guess, for some of the folks maybe you haven't kept up with, what have you been up to the last, 8 years? We heard, we knew you were in command with Whit, bring us from then to now, so we can kind of just, know what's going on in your life. What are you up to?
So I got to get a little more light here. It's beautiful outside here in Northeast Austin. So we got the yard and the pup out here. The kids are in the house, so I apologize. In a nutshell, I'll start over with that quick progression. Hawaii, Battalion XO, Brigade XO, selected to Secretary of Defense Fellowship program in Washington, D.C. I attended Johns Hopkins University, got my second master's there. And then my utilization is out here at U.S. Army Futures Command in Austin, Texas. It's a great place to be. Really, it's looking at and integrating a modernization command with the science and technology in a really innovative area like Austin, where you can harness the academia and defense industry and all the emerging technologies. So it's really cool to be here. And then I guess finally, what's in the future is I was selected for battalion command, and I will be going to Fort Bliss this summer and staging there, and I'll be taking command of 6-1 Cavalry Squadron in 1st Brigade, 1st AD at Fort Bliss, and that'll occur next summer. So
that's awesome.
That's where I'm at now, and that's I never thought I would be here to this day. It's not exactly a cakewalk, in this and having a family at the same time. There's a lot of juggling that goes on with that. Army always remains top priority. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is when you sign up. So it's definitely a balance, but I don't intend on transitioning from the Army anytime soon. I kind of like it. So.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. I mean, I think you were saying kind of before we started recording that, like, in 2004 when you graduated, if you thought, am I going to stay in for 20 years? Heck no. I feel like most people who stay in for that long, like, didn't intend to, and the people that thought they were going to make it a career end up getting out at like 5 years, or shortly after that. So I think, it's got a way of working itself out, and it sounds like you're doing some great things. Appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment exactly. And my best friend Kurt Pryor, going through the academy, fellow wrestler on the team, EIWA place winner with me. He's also doing doing great things in the Army. In fact, he's actually 1 year ahead of me. He jumped a rank, and he'll be with me at Fort Bliss. And we'll be stationed together for the first time in our career. So that's going to be really awesome to see and have us both there and our families being able to link up. But, to your point, he was the last guy that I expected coming out of West Point that he would still be doing this. And he's doing very good, highly successful at what he's doing too. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting how it works itself out, like Brian said. But thank you for continuing to serve. Me and Brian are obviously out, so thanks for doing that. You mentioned several names of people that you have stayed in touch with. We got some cool photos. Me and Brian did of class of '93. They did a reunion last week, and Reno Arredondo had sent some funny photos of them partying. I don't remember where it was, Dallas, I think. Anyways, I guess the question would be, is there anybody that you'd like to hear from around your time there, or somebody you think we should get on?
Oh, absolutely. I'll call a couple out. The first is, Kurt Pryor and the stories that he will tell, in many regard will probably be opposite of the stories I tell, or have a different opinion on that. And we were kind of like oil and vinegar, but I think that's why we got along. We just saw things separately. But he was, yeah. He would be the next person you need to get a hold of, and he's got some very, very valuable insight, on Army experiences, wrestling experiences, and his background was much more diversified as far as wrestling and growing up. So he would be one. I think Eddie Gibbons would absolutely be another fantastic add. Talk about just a tough, hardworking, dedicated individual to the team, to Army wrestling, and was always there, and he was one of my guys. He is one of my proteges coming into the team, one of my freshmen. And we actually keep in touch quite a bit, about every year, maybe a little bit more so.
Well, we before we go, we had one listener question in from one of our faithful listeners, Sam Ruda. He's got a son who's a plebe, so I think that's why he asked this question. But he said, if you could give a plebe one solid piece of advice for summer cadet field training, what would it be?
My advice.
Good question too. You didn't know this was coming. I want to meet so I can get like the.
That is a fantastic question, and thanks for sending that forward. I actually gave this some thought as I was thinking to my time where we would go to the Olympic Training Center a couple times, and we'd spend our time doing that, which is great. It's good for wrestling. However, after many years of being in the Army, there is also opportunities we missed that for like Army schools and making ourselves better and knocking out some of those tough Army schools. My recommendation is I would do some of the toughest schools that they have to offer. Why? Because the wrestlers, and from experience, are among the most in shape and physically able to put your body through the conditions of some of those challenging schools, whether it be Special Forces Assessment and Selection, if they still offer that. There's Sapper School. There's actually the Combat Diver course. They're offering that. Like, why wouldn't take advantage of some of those really tough schools? It's only going to help you because it's help you physically, your physical fitness wise. But all those schools are a young man's game. It doesn't get better with age. This is not fine wine. Do it while you're young, in shape at West Point. It's going to enable you professionally. And you know what? You got the entire rest of the year to worry about wrestling, and that also enables you in wrestling and helps promote the physical fitness in many regards. That's what I would say looking back on my experience. The younger me would be like, oh, go to the Olympic Training Center. You're going to get great exposure to athletes. That is the case, but you also have a heck of a coaching staff at West Point too. So that's my humble opinion on the West Point summers that I wish I'd taken advantage of when I was there. Because then I had to do it as an old man. Like Brian Rowan, I seen you when I was a major going through air assault school, and we were doing team Jose activities. Like that's hard to do. That when you get older, you get in your mid-30s, trying to do young man's game with some of these schools gets to be a challenge. So that's what would offer that to you.
Yeah, and you'll be happy to know with some of the more recent grads. I think starting in 2014, they've got a combat diver, or they've got someone going to combat diving school every summer from the wrestling team. It's like a tradition now that they have. There's divers like every year now from the wrestling team, so that's pretty cool.
That is awesome. That is awesome, and to sustain. It's good for the program, good for the wrestlers, and it's good to have that. BHAW, that's what it's all about.
It's a good place to end right there, I think, on that note.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and best of luck at Fort Bliss in command.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. I look forward to this. I enjoy these podcasts. I still support the team. I like to support the wrestling program there too, and I think this is one of the many ways to help give back. So I encourage those to continue doing this. But thanks to you guys for putting this on. It's a good effort, and it helps provide some insight to some of these young wrestlers.
Yeah, well, appreciate you coming on again.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW Radio Show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.